Good afternoon, everyone. So really quickly, my name is Jen Chen. For those who don't know me, I'm Managing Director at Unqork, leading a lot of our partnerships and engagements in financial services, specifically in the capital market space. I'm honored today to kind of be the host for today's session on international banking digital transformation. I'm going to assume that if you're here, you know what digital transformation is. So I'm not going to talk about, how it's a foundational change, about the customer experience and the digital, technologies out there. But we do have two guest speakers who, I've worked with and kind of talk through how they are driving digital transformation in their bank, right? Especially in this international bank where you have multiple markets, different niches that you have to kind of cater to, but still need to deliver like a seamless digital customer experience. So with that, I'm going to kind of let Sri and Steve quickly introduce themselves and their company. And then I have a couple of questions. Afterwards, we'll open up to the audience and kind of let them do a quick Q&A. Sri, do you want to start?
All right. Thanks a lot for the opportunity and thanks for being here. So I'm Sri Vasireddy. I'm CTO of Triterras. Triterras is actually a non-banking finance organization. It's based out of Singapore, and today we have actually Singapore and Dubai in two headquarters. In simple terms, supply chain financing, for those that you know, but I'll just give you a very good example. Let's say in the digital era, we all started ordering food, Uber Eats and things like that. Before that, restaurants were paid directly whenever we went to the restaurants and ate. But now there's a 15-day gap between when Uber gets paid, but when Uber pays the restaurants, there's a 15 days gap. And some of them started facing $50,000, $100,000 cash flow differences that they need to bridge that gap. And that's a very good example of where we come in to bridge the gap. We also have a very large, traditional, trade finance and, trade discovery and, inter-country payments and things like that as a part of our platform. But in a nutshell, that's what we do, right? Yeah.
Thanks. Again, great to be here today. So Steve Dunn, I lead Innovation and FinTech at Sumitomo Mitsui Bank. We're a 400-year-old bank, Japanese bank, with presence in Asia, the Americas, and EMEA. My focus is largely the Americas. And I spent 25 years plus, I kind of stop at 25, but 25 years plus in banking. 2/3 have been in corporate, leading development teams, and then 1/3 was consulting back into big banks to help them think and act like startups. So I'm Silicon Valley based, moving back to New York, but spent a lot of time with startups. And so, bringing both corporate and the startup perspective into the bank to help drive transformation through innovation. And we are a user with Unqork, and we've got some good stories to tell, I think, today.
Awesome. Thank you, Sri and Steve. So really quickly, when we start, Steve, I'll start with you. Can you kind of help lay out your vision and strategy for digital transformation at SMBC? And maybe talk us through some initiatives and use cases that you're currently kind of transforming at SMBC.
Sure. So I think, transformation, every company is transforming today in all different aspects. So, we being a 400-year-old bank where we've got a lot of culture, a lot of ways, the way we've always done things, but at the same time, the way the market's moving, whether it's around, digital assets, whether it's around ESG, there's a lot of key topics and themes that are happening and driving the market. And so we need to modernize not just our current business set, but also where do we want to play? So where are we strong? Where's the opportunity? So when we think about transformation, we really need to think around, as I said, today, and then kind of prepare for the future. And so when we think about transformation, it's really about how to be more agile. It's thinking about how to think and deploy better customer experiences, and then how do we leverage new technology to lower cost and to to execute faster. So it's really those three dimensions, not easy, but still a lot to do underneath. When we think about how we leverage Unqork, I mean, for us, there's a lot of workflows, there's a lot of different engagements that we have within the business across systems, across functions, and it creates a very fractured experience. And so, there's different ways to solve that, but the way we're looking at with an Unqork standpoint is really to leverage Unqork to drive these journeys, these customer journeys. And with customer journeys, you can actually go across systems and workflows, right? Because really, at the end of the day, it's not about solving a problem in one part of the bank or at the front office, right? And then have a different set of solutions in the middle and the back. You need to start from the customer's perspective. And so once you've got that, you focus on that experience layer. Then you can leverage the Unqork, the logic that's embodied within Unqork, then to create those connections across the stack. So for us, then it's a matter of leveraging APIs to connect across different systems. But again, that opens up another set of transformational challenges, right? Unless you have a well-developed API, microservices infrastructure, that's another element you need to look at. And again, where do you start? You don't start with the APIs, you start again with the experience. So again, I think everything comes back to CX for us.
Great.
Yeah, so prior to Triterras, I had my own company, and we built a low-code platform for DevOps. So we auto-generated Terraform and Jenkins code and so on. And I'm fascinated with the low-code, no-code, primarily because of it's the productivity gain, your responsiveness to customers, and so on. But more than a vision, a learning for me. I mean, as much as I love technology, it's going to be my lifetime learning to leave technology and solution aside. And the disruptive innovation is really about, and if you guys are familiar with the jobs to be done theory that Clayton Christensen made popular, it's think from the unmet need of a customer perspective and completely leave the technology and solution aside. So a good example is the customer does not need a half-inch drill, they need a half-inch hole, right? So that mindset, and once it takes a lot to bring that mindset in the organization, and that in itself is a transformation, without any technology involvement. And so once you get people to start thinking from a unmet need perspective, then we have a challenge, which is basically, if you're, as a kid, if you played the telephone game, right? By the time you whisper in everybody's ear, by the time it comes out of the other ear, it's completely different. And we've been battling that for a long time, from customer to business to product manager to product owner to architect to developer. It's irrespective of it's agile or not, there is a problem there. And what I find fascinating about no code or platforms like Unqork is that they cut that gap, right? Because you empower the person closer to the customer to do more, then you're reducing the gap to that delta, which means the amount of rework that you're cutting is a lot more. And the fact that you're responsive to the customer engages the customer, and you are more likely to be more disruptive, right? So that's the, whatever you want to call vision, learning, that's a lifetime thing. I don't think I'm probably looking at whatever the 10 years later the next generation of Unqork is, right? So from an Unqork perspective, we basically, I joined Triterras January of 2021. And my first thing was just transformed the underlying, non-functional to be low code with another platform called Duplo. And then we immediately picked up the transformation of the entire platform. We're rebuilding the entire platform. All the modules that I talked about, from onboarding to trade discovery, trade finance, supply chain finance, all of that using Unqork. Yeah.
Thank you, Sri. Steve, another question for you. I mean, I know Sri just mentioned a couple of use cases that is using Unqork for. If you could kind of, just don't have to go into all the details, but like, what are some of the use cases that Unqork is helping drive transformation at SMBC?
So I think it's very broad. I mean, we've looked at cases within internal audit, and again, it's all workflow based. We're working in our structured credit group to find better ways to not just bring in data, client data, and engage clients, but also on the internal side. So how do we manage? The business of structured credit is really around managing facilities. It's around access to the visibility around that data, and so that's an area we've been working on. Also, loan servicing. Again, when you think about commercial investment banking, one of the key business for us is credit, right? And so we're at early stages in this project, but essentially it's very broad based. But I think the key for us is really understanding that workflow, right? And I think that the projects that are best suited are those where there's a lot of friction in that customer experience, that workflow, right? So you can still use Unqork to solve a problem, maybe a sort of a micro problem within a business or workflow, but the power comes when you go across. So when you think about servicing, it's really around origination. So we take the deal, we manage the deal from the client into the bank, and then through different processes, whether it's KYC, whether it's underwriting, right, through to the actual entry into the deal system, and then back office. So you can see there that we haven't really gone front to back yet, but the potential for us to transform across the bank is quite high.
Thank you, Steve. Actually, I have a question for both of you, and maybe we'll start with Sri. After talking to you and kind of seeing the engagements and project that you have in Unqork, I thought it was very interesting that, from a Triterras perspective, you started in Singapore, you have an office in Dubai, but you're basically using Unqork and digital transformation to expand to more of these non-OECD countries, right? Versus, Steve, for SMBC, Japanese bank, 400-year-old, and then kind of using it to really plan and have its presence within America, right? But different markets, different niches, different needs, but still kind of like leveraging technology and Unqork being one of them to kind of drive that expansion. Can you talk a little bit more about that and kind of provide a little bit details for the audience?
Yeah. So I kind of frame the our purpose from a customer perspective, but if you look at it from a lending or a banking perspective, who our investors are, lenders are, what we're really trying to do is to bring this modern day investing opportunities, like I talked about, deliveries, there is actually, if you think about it, we're not relying on this restaurant to pay us. It's really the Uber Eats paying us, so the risk is low, but the yield is high. So it's really making, finding these opportunities and making these available to nowadays even larger, hedge funds are also, putting aside a little bit of their portfolio into this, this kind of vehicles. So that's. If you're really focusing on disruption, it's better to go, focus in areas where, where the barrier to entry is low and the opportunity is high. So what, even though we started in Singapore, like Dubai and Africa and South America, I mean, it's sort of like that equatorial belt where this opportunity is, is popping up, and then. Our strategy is to grow both organically and inorganically, and the reason we moved to Dubai is through an acquisition, and I will likely have more acquisitions in the rest of the world as well. But when each time we go through the acquisition, we also did not want to have. I mean, all you're talking about is SMB lending and SMB type of opportunity, and all of them have a mixed bag of different languages they use, different clouds they use, and we wanted to be ready to catch them And there's not a whole lot of difference from a workflow perspective. If you think about KYC, onboarding, everybody will have that. If you think about lending and how do you do invoice calculations and all that. So there is going to be a lot of commonality. So we wanted to be prepared to catch that in such a way that our acquisition cycles and integration cycles become so much more faster, and we bring the company together and start humming together, right? So that's the key. I mean, not that we don't want to go to OECD countries, we all want to go to OECD countries, but I think there is a good niche for where we are today in the equatorial belt, right? Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar in there that it's the no code is an accelerator, and for us, we've been largely more of a buy and integrate shop, but with Unqork, it gives us the ability to start to more strategically develop end user solutions, right? So, as an example, what we've done is we've really almost like a true kind of startup is that we've seeded 1 or 2 or possibly 3 projects to demonstrate the value, and it's. So again, it's not just product development. A lot of it is like transformation. It's cultural change. It's a mindset change. Because what's happening is we're actually putting more power in the hand of the front office, the end users, and so that's not as easy as it sounds. Because a lot of the business on the desk, they don't have time, right? But we need them to do that. To move agile, we need product managers. We don't have them, right? So we have to stand in as proxies for them, and then we go on some of these boot camps, which starts to show the power of the drag and drop. So all of a sudden they can see there that they start to own that CX. But then it opens up another challenge. Well, design thinking, has anyone heard of that? Not in our bank, right? So again, all these good problems are sort of uncovering themselves, which just starts to set us up for, greater power to drive and to own the change. And so really what we're trying to do here is to basically create those pockets of proof, and then over time, and we're starting to see that, people are saying, well, what are you guys doing over there? What is Unqork? Tell me more about it. Well, there's such and such a low code over there. Why aren't you using that? And so we get into some of the discussion around why they're different, how they're different. And then, I've got to say, I think Yen and team probably, we've got it there that, but I don't know if I should say this because you're going to get a lot more work, but essentially I can call up Yen and say, I've got a new use case. And he'll come in and we'll do an hour workshop. And within a week, we then have a high level sort of, hey, here are the components, right? And so our business has the idea around what can happen, what it's going to cost. And so again, when you think about being agile, when you think about accelerating change, a lot of it's all there. And so we're still in the early innings. But again, as a tool set to drive transformation, it's a key element.
I just want to add, so even our experience starting was with the Unqork Professional Services, Ojilan and team. I mean, they did a fantastic job, and then also want to put a shout out for Merlin, and she carried after that, right? So she's like relentlessly bridging the gap between what we want versus what is not there, and the engineering, and I think that experience has been really good.
Thank you, Steve and Sri. I think one thing that actually caught me, as we were kind of prepping for this session is, I think McKinsey, Bain, a bunch of consulting companies did like an analysis on digital transformation and the success rate. And I think they were quoting numbers as high as like 75, 90% of digital transformations are failing at banks and other large corporations. Can you talk through a little bit of, what's your strategy to kind of mitigate against risk of failure, how, potentially Unqork can be helping with that? I know you've mentioned like agility and kind of orchestrating across different workflows and systems. How does that all come together for you? And maybe Sri, you could start.
I don't know. I mean, which transformation? So talk about telecom, cloud, virtualization. Which transformation went successfully? Right? So I mean, and there's so the challenge is really making people feel comfortable that they're going to keep their jobs and they're going to grow, right? And I don't know if we can do enough for that. I mean, the reason they fail is because they're afraid of that change. They're afraid of that transformation. They don't know what's going to happen. So, I was in Unqork, so like my previous company, we built a low-code platform. But I can tell you the success is with a benevolent dictator that exists in the organization, right? And they need to carry a stick, understand the outcome, just really be very open about who is going to keep the jobs, who is going to lose the jobs. I mean, it is inevitable, right? You can't, so there are two things that come to my mind, right? So one is we're always trying to maximize the customers and revenue, and we are always trying to maximize the employee satisfaction, right? Employee work and employee satisfaction. What you prioritize is more important. I feel like if you prioritize customers and revenue, I'm not saying only customers, because you don't want to be working with the customers that are just driving you crazy without paying, right? So it's customers and revenue. You prioritize that, and you apply the jobs to be done theory, you'll automatically find the employees uplifting, right? They will see the satisfaction, they'll be happy. If you try to do the opposite, that is just focus on employees and their satisfaction, and then you lose both. That's my experience, right? And unfortunately, in large corporations, already they are just protecting their turf. I mean, that is, the incentive is to just, stay put and, longevity, right? And if you need to bring that change by making them focus more and more on the employees and customers and on the customers and revenue. And, I had to, when I started, in this role, I told them, look, we are going to move to low code for this purpose, right? Your real satisfaction is not the technology Your real satisfaction is when you can see the value difference that you're creating to your end customer. So you may like this, you may not like this, but this is the time. You tell us if you want to be on this, and if you want to be that Java developer for good, then you should look outside, because we are going to move off of that. Right? So just be open, honest. 50% left, 50% stayed back, and that's an automatic cost savings. That's what I promised my management. I said, hey, I'm going to get this done, eventually. Once we are done, it'll be 50%, right? And I don't want to be laying off 50% of the people. I made the people choose what they want to be, and they went on their own schedule, right? And that's how it worked for us.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to add to that, we're trying to come in from a different angle, right? So I'm a product manager. I've been in tech forever, but I'm more of a product guy. I've always bridged between tech and the business. And then, the last 7 or so years working with startups, for me, Lean Startup told me a lot about how you should be building, how you should be approaching new product development versus the way we've done it in banks. And so when we look at this, we think about it from Lean Startup, which is really how do you de-risk an idea, right? How do you by de-risking, really what we're doing here is we're saying, what are the assumptions? What don't we know, right? And then what tests do we have to apply that to actually remove the unknowns? And so the way to do that is start to do, applied design thinking, journey mapping, iteration, and then rapid MVPs. And what you're doing there is you're essentially going through two elements of what you want to do on any startup does when they're looking to go to market is validate the desirability, so validate the user experience. And you do that by bringing them in through workshops and iterations, right? The second thing is feasibility, and that's really, can we build it? Is it technically possible? The third one, which is a little bit further along, is really around the viability, right? Can we make money? But at this point, what we're trying to do is we're trying to de-risk an idea. Can we build this across our operations team that's going to cross reconciliations, going to cross operations, going to cross settlement, right? We don't know that. Now, typically, if you're going to run a traditional project, you don't think about that. You just write up your waterfall plan, you spend 6 months writing your BRD, and then you go and start coding. So what we do by applying Lean Startup and design thinking, we're actually using prototypes to write the requirements. And then the next natural step is to grab your drag and drop Unqork to go in and essentially just, follow your prototyping, your low fidelity, maybe high fidelity wireframes. And so you've taken the risk out of it because not only have the end user said, that's what I want, that's the experience, that's going to be, it's going to save us time, it's going to reduce our cost to serve. The tech team say, okay, now I need to build these types of connectors, these APIs back to these systems. Okay, we haven't done that before. We need to maybe build set of microservices and wrappers around that, but at least we have the blueprint. And then we can run some rapid innovation around the UI side, and we can build out those front ends. And so normally, you don't do that. So again, we've kind of come probably late to recognizing this, since this is maybe more of an aha thing, is that if we can do that up front, right, then the use of Unqork is a lot more straightforward, and the actually time to get to market is a lot shorter. And so that's how we go about trying to de-risk.
Yep.
Yeah, just one more comment I just remembered. So this is another learning I had is as we go through any transformation, it's a catch-22 situation, right? First, unlearning is more difficult than learning. So the existing team members would have to unlearn and relearn, whereas if you bring young talent, all they have to do is just learn, right? But you just can't have all young talent. You need to have that senior people that understand your business and systems. So it's very important to identify the growth mindset senior people that are in the journey with you, and then support them with a very, smart young talent that is just have to learn, and that group will drive transformation more successfully. Right?
Thank you. I do want to leave some time for Q&A, so maybe just one last question for Steve and Sri. You guys are both pretty early in your Unqork journey, but you've kind of gone through at least one, if not multiple, applications in production. What's one piece of advice you would give to people in the audience who may be just starting, maybe somewhere in the middle, or maybe trying to kind of grow and expand on Unqork? Steve, do you want to start first?
Sure. I think from what I've spoken, I think you're going to guess, it's really around, it's prioritizing the customer journey, right? Really understanding what is that end user experience. Because often when we think about transformation, it's not digitizing the current process, it's actually reinventing and reimagining what the new process should look like. And the only way to do that is workshop and journey mapping.
I just take the opportunity to discuss some of the challenges we faced in the process also. So one is we're based out of Singapore, so we created our Amazon account in Singapore, and the Unqork control plane is in the US Amazon accounts. So the latency was, giving us a lot of trouble. And we didn't realize that. I mean, it went, even within Unqork, it was like, what's going on? No other customer is facing this problem. Why are you facing this problem? And I think finally when, Tushar came on board, and, it was awesome after that. It just got to the nuts and bolts and we figured out. And I could tell even before they made the change that this is going to fix the problem. It took a while for us to, everything initially was like, nah, it doesn't sound like this is going to fix the problem. It took a while like that. So if you're having, if you're in other parts of the world, just, watch out for that, and you might need some special provisioning, or maybe the fix that they put for us will, is commonly available. The other thing is, just like any other, transformation, I was the first worldwide public sector employee for Amazon Web Services. So I knew how much, as Amazon, we struggled to let the auditors think about. So auditors are, the last ones to start transforming, right? So they're going to stick to, this is what I know. Here is the, controls. So you need to be very clear about your, mitigation controls. And some of these, because I think it's a common theme. I'm not saying, if you walk around, and I was just listening to, hey, what are your challenges? So there are, the revision histories and logging and these things. Unqork is, they're knocking them out, but in the meantime, you have to be prepared for, how are you going to, definitely mitigation, techniques. I mean, I'm happy to talk offline as to what we did because we need to be ISO 27000 compliant and PCI compliant and all that. But just think through those, especially as you come closer to, going live and, production.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think it will open to questions from the audience. I know Shamante has a mic, so just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic over.
Sri, how did you guys make the PCI compliant?
How did we make PCI compliant? So I mean, it's a layered approach. Any compliance has a family of controls, right? So we are, our entire stack is based on Amazon. Even blockchain, we use an existing, managed, Amazon blockchain. So we take the PCI and ISO controls that Amazon offers, and then Unqork and access controls. So we take family by family, and if you have to do two-factor authentication, so we built two-factor authentication, custom built the two-factor authentication with integrations, turning on encryption, like that. I mean, so we just go family after family, and bringing Unqork did not, like before Unqork, where we had our own stack versus Unqork, coming in. So they have. So that is one positive thing, is right, because they are already, ISO compliant. They can share their paperwork, and so we take the Amazon paperwork, their paperwork, and actually get rid of whatever we had to do, right? So it's actually easier if we do it right. Yeah.
My question's for Steve. I'm assuming SMBC's idea of risk is conservative compared to other places that you worked or even in Silicon Valley. So how do you approach talking about innovation, getting people comfortable with change, and how did you have that narrative work for you instead of potentially hindering your ability to do these changes or transformations?
I wouldn't say it's straightforward, and I wouldn't say we've solved it. I think there's different sets of conversations, right? So I think that it's one thing talking and getting the business to see where the value is, because you focus around what are their needs, what are they trying to do, right? And what are those conceptual solutions? The other one then is, as you go through that, is, well, let me jump in the lab. Let's run some experiments. Let's validate some of these ideas, right? But it's once you get out of the lab, right, is to, well, now we have to talk with security, InfoSec, legal, compliance, and I think they're the they're the ones that take longer to solve, especially when you're playing in a new space. But I don't think that's any different. I've been sort of leading development teams for 20 years. That's always been a challenge, right? But we never had sandboxes where we could test things out, right? So I think there, whether you're moving to new sort of, two-factor or SSO or some other type of technical capability, whether you're trying to prove out there that we can actually separate access to data, we didn't have the lab construct. So I think what you want to do is, again, it goes back to from early on is identify where those risks are, prioritize them, and start early to de-risk them. So bring in compliance, bring in legal, bring in InfoSec. If you're going to go, cloud-based, which most of it is, bring in the cloud people early and start talking through what you're trying to do. Because again, what they're trying to do is they're trying to protect, right? So you just get in their shoes and work out, okay, what is that they're trying to protect? What am I trying to do? Where's the gap? And then address the gap.
And actually, if I can add to that, Steve, because we've been on this journey with you, right? I mean, what's the one thing that Unqork can add is we've done this for other clients, right? We've been through InfoSec reviews, we've been through architecture reviews at some of the most complex banks, so we can bring a lot of that conversation because it's typically the same kind of questions, right? How do you protect the data? Is it encrypted in transit, right? It's a lot of these same questions, and what Unqork provides as a platform is basically an out-of-the-box solution for a lot of that.
Unqork in low code is an important part of transformation, but isn't the end-all be-all solution. I'm interested, to get both your views in terms of where does low-code platforms like Unqork fit in your solutions compared to what you're building in APIs versus what you're building in a core system? Do you have kind of a strategy or a vision of where Unqork plays best?
I think, so like any other thing, right? I mean, so this low code, it's buzz all over. And, so I think it's very important to understand. So there is low code, like I said, there's low code at a DevOps level. People that are doing pipelines are also workflows for delivering their low code solutions there, right? And like Salesforce has their low code solution and there are HR flows, ServiceNow flows. So I think it is important to understand that your custom, your differentiated application, right? What differentiates you as a business? Those workflows, I believe, are a good fit for Unqork, right? Now, that's again, so when I say workflow, you have UIs, and then UIs have workflows, and workflows rely on services, right? If your workflows are not very simple, logic-oriented workflows, and you have to rely on services, then you have to build those services, right, and expose those APIs. And if the intelligence or rules in those steps, if it's rule-based, you might have to have a rules engine. Again, Unqork's rules engine may not be the most powerful. Or if you are AI ML-based, right, intelligence-based, then you have to build your own models and expose those APIs, right? So that's the framework I would use to start thinking about, it's, you don't want to start building a service desk workflow with Unqork. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, there's rather use something, that's already there, like with ServiceNow or something.
Just adding to that, I think it comes down to the use case, right? So, Unqork, what does it do? It gives you, the ability to accelerate change, right? So identify the right use cases. For us, it may be there that, we're doing a lot of work in access, right? And we're creating those Excels. We might be getting data from the outside. We populate the Excels. We do some complex calculations, and then we move it along the value chain, right? So that, number one, end user computing, there's risk there, right? We've got complexity in the calculations, again, at risk. And then we've got a fractured workflow, right, which is a breakdown, which is a cost. And so I'd look at that, right, first of all. And again, I'm big fan of prototyping, because what you do there, by at least getting your arms around that UX, the user experience, then you can see, okay, what's next? And to Sri's point, then you've got to get down to the business logic and then the services component, right? And if you don't have a microservice strategy, well, that's the next thing for you to look at. So again, I think it's, transformation isn't, one all-you-can-eat solution. It's components. But again, it's a journey, right? And again, it depends where you want to start. And I think the big thing about transformation is you got to orient around the customer journey. That's the key, right? Everything else drives off the back of that.
Just a heads up, we'll take 2 more questions.
Hi, Sri. My company, we do a systems integration for the federal government. We recently partnered with Unqork to bring it to the government agencies. I know you worked in the government agencies for a long time. So what are the challenges you see Unqork to expand across different agencies?
So Ram, so we are a very infamous company that DoD acquired our low-code platform for $950 million contract. And then that just got busted because all the, Oracle and everybody else sued the government for that step, right? So so it's not easy. Someone asked the question about, big corporations. It's not because of the capability. It's just that there is so much around it that you have to, again, in a company, if you're talking about, people's jobs, their contractors are losing contracts. So you can rest assured they're going to fight tooth and nail for it. So I think, really, going back to what Steve was saying, finding your, true sponsor, their pain point, demonstrating that value, and winning first. And even the other panel that I was listening to before this, right? Just show your first win before you ask for anything more, and just iteratively just win those small wins, and really lay low. Don't don't tout your story too big. Then everybody will be after you because they are threatened by by your success, right? So that's what I would suggest.
That's right. I think thank you everyone for joining our session, and especially thank you Steve and Sri for kind of providing insights to the audience.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.